I am 67 years old. You imagine how difficult that is to say when I realize that I'm going to be the oldest person you see on stage today. But I am comforted in that as I look around the audience, I know there's a number of you that are even older than me. And what we likely share as we age, as we reach the golden pinnacle of our lives, is how we look at it. What impact have we had on the communities in which we live and the societies in which we engage and with our children and our grandchildren. And for me, what I've been focusing on has been, how do I instill a sense of hope in the future? And how do I help the people around me strengthen their courage to realize their dreams and to resolve the myriad of issues that are facing our world today? My name's David Young, and I want to share with you some of my thoughts about hope and courage. My mom died this year. Her name was Dot, 89 years old, and I miss her. She died 15 years to the week that my father died. His name was Gord. And I'm going to talk to you about Dot and Gord a bit, because they taught me about hope and courage. My mother was the eternal optimist. If we ran out of gas on a family trip 30 miles from home, she would say, "Thank God it wasn't 60 miles. I think we can walk it," she would say. If our cupboard was half empty, with her, it was always half full. She would find the opportunity within the challenge, the problem, anything that we faced. It could always be worse. Even during the midst of the COVID-19 epidemic, she would say to me, "You know, David, I lived through the measles epidemic of the 40s and 50s. I was quarantined for 2 or 3 weeks then as a kid. I think I got this." A source of encouragement to me, but also a source of hope for the people around her. My father, Gord, he was a man of courage. And while Dot had the sense of the opportunity and how we could get past the hurdle, Gord would figure out how we would do it. Gord made sure the car was well tuned. He made sure it didn't run out of gas. It was oiled. It was fine-tuned with military precision. Given that he was a sergeant major in the army, it's not surprising. And I always felt safe and secure with my dad. As a little kid, I always knew that he'd get us through whatever was going on. The storms would be going on. It'd be a snowstorm in Ontario, and there'd be a blizzard, and you weren't sure you were going to make it home, and I always knew we would, because my dad, he had read the map. He'd kept the car in shape. He knew the roads. He knew what he was going to do, and he wouldn't let go of that. And meanwhile, my mom is cheering us on, helping us sing songs, keep on the sunny side, those kinds of things. Rings a bell for a few of you. Why is that so important in my life, you might ask? Why would I even choose to talk about that? Because what that did for me as a child was actually built resiliency. To cope with the failures, the pitfalls, the challenges that life was going to come at me with. Not everybody has a dot and gourd in their life. Not every person in this room or in the community we serve have had those kinds of role models leaving that kind of legacy to them. And so they have less resiliency, perhaps less inner resolve, less inner hope, and less confidence about how they face the future. I think it was mentioned in the introduction. By the way, I'm the only one in the group here that had to remove his hearing aids before they could put this set on. So I couldn't quite hear what was said, but I'm sure it was great. I work for an agency, many of you know, that I've grown to love over the course of my 17 years there, called Sources. And as a community-based not-for-profit that promotes social wellness and community, we have a whole range of people who enter our doors. And some of those folks are struggling with issues around housing, around hunger, around trauma that we've heard about today. They come with a whole range of needs and issues and challenges. And people say, well, you do so many things, and you got so many staff with all these different kinds of skills and ability. What is the unifying thing that brings you all together as an agency? And my answer to people who ask me that question, and my encouragement and my request of the staff and volunteers who work with us, is that when somebody enters our doors, and then when they walk out again, they feel somewhat more hopeful than they did when they entered. We may not have solved their problems. We may not have come up with solutions. There may be insurmountable challenges for them. But they should not feel alone. They may not know how they're going to get to where they want to go, but they know they're not alone, that there's somebody on their side, and there's a pathway forward. Let me talk to you about Diane. If you ever have the opportunity to visit our resource center on Maple Street, you'll get greeted by Diane. I love getting greeted by Diane. She treats everybody with respect, kindness, and warmth. If you enter our doors, she makes sure you're taken care of. If we can't help you, she'll figure out who can help you. She gives people treats. Wow. I don't know if there are any physicians in the audience, but a number of years ago, one of the things I struggled with was going to visit my family doctor, who was a wonderful family doctor. I didn't like going to see him because the experience in the waiting room was terrible. And the front office staff just didn't treat me like I was valued or welcome. In fact, I seemed like I was getting in the way of other things they needed to do. Interesting enough, my dentist's office, I didn't really like my dentist that much, but the receptionist treated me like gold, and I didn't mind going there. Very different experiences. Then I took my dog to the vet. My dog was treated like platinum. They gave him treats. I wanted a treat. So when I think about people who enter our doors, or yours, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a city councillor, or you're a doctor, what experience are they getting? How welcome are they feeling when you walk through the door? Because the key thing you need to do at that moment is to make sure that they feel hope. And the best way to do that is to express kindness and sincerity, and to ensure that they realize that they are the most important person in your life at that moment. In a world in which, if we visit a few of the fast food establishments, and I won't name them, when you walk in the door and you realize that you are less important than the person who just did it on their phone and ordered, and the person who's in the car lane waiting to get picked up, you're the last person served. It's very transactional. What we want is a relationship with people who walk through the doors. And we need to listen. We need to put away the phone. We need to listen with our heart and our head and our eyes. One of the things we talk about at Sources is that we use both our hearts and our heads to innovate solutions to problems people face. So the heartfelt response, the hope, the seed of hope is the beginning of a journey of change for people. A number of years ago, I was giving a presentation about a program we offer called Discover Why, and it's a free counseling program for young people. And after I gave the presentation, I had a couple come up and chat with me. And they wanted to share their story. And they said, we have really been struggling with our daughter. And in fact, we didn't know what to do. We were at our wits' end. And the father had been out for a walk a drive with a friend of his. And he was sharing with him the challenges he was having. And I don't know if any of you have gone through parenting teenagers. There can be a few ups and downs. And the friend said, turn here at this corner. And he turned. And then he says, pull up in front of this building. And it was our Peace Arts Resource Center. And the friend turned to him and said, take your daughter here. These people will help. It meant a lot to me. But actually what meant even more was seeing the hope in the eyes of this couple. They hadn't even had the appointment yet, but they had a sense of, A, we're not alone, and we're hopeful there's a pathway forward to make life better for our daughter and for ourselves. So we use our hearts, but we also use our heads. We also need to think about courage. Person's hopeful. They're hopeful of change. They're hopeful that they can transform their lives in some way. But it just doesn't happen like magic. We need to build courage. To encourage comes from an old French word called encourager, which actually means building strength. When we're working with people, whether it's our own children, or somebody else's child, or somebody who's walking through our door, we want to build hope. But once we've built some hope, our motto isn't just do it, right? What we're working from is an expression where I think I can't, or I don't think I can, to something that says I think I can. So we engage in a process of discovery together. First of all, we identify a pathway forward. You notice I'm avoiding the term plan. Most of us really don't have plans for our lives, and why should we expect other people to do so? But we do travel pathways. And we think about, we have a conversation about, this is what you're hoping to change in your life. What pathway may lead us to that change? And after we've done that, we talk a little bit about, well, how do you equip yourself for that? Is there some training you need? Is there some awareness building? Do you need to build your communication skills? Do you need to change your relationship? Do you need to build your network? These are all parts of the professional engagement, but it too can be a part of your personal engagement with people in your lives. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. So we talked about a pathway forward, and then we started to figure out what are the deficits and what are the strengths we have and what do we need to build on. And then we need to think about what are the relationships that we need to have to help us achieve this change in our life. What are the connections? Who do I need to relate to? Who can help me with this in my life? And your conversation with that person is to explore that and introduce them to some other people. And then, probably the most important part, is you travel the journey together. This isn't to show up in my office or come and chat with me, son or daughter. Here's the 3 or 4 things you need to do to fix your life. Come back and let me know when you got it done. In fact, that could be the worst thing we do. It's hard to make change. If it was easy, the person would already have done it. It's part of where the hope and the encouragement comes in. We also have to be careful that we just don't insert plug-and-play options in people's lives. You show up, you got a problem, here's your response. We need to be careful that we are solving with, not solving for, either our children or people who walk through our doors. We need to work together on what those solutions might be. Let me give you an example of that. Last year, my son, I'll call him Alex because that's his name. He'd been working, he'd finished university, he was working for a large corporate accounting firm in Toronto. Oh man, I'd successfully launched this young man. My work was done. I could focus on my own needs and goals. Well, Alex informs me on the phone one night that he's not so happy in this job. And he thinks he needs to quit. These aren't words that a parent wants to hear. But he does. Because you know what? That next job is just around the corner, right? Whew. Well, it wasn't. And Alex and I embarked on a journey together that took 1 year for him to achieve his next employment. And it was a journey that I didn't realize I was going to be so intimately involved in. One of the things we did is we connected by phone. We would Zoom twice a week. I'd help him set goals. I would help him be accountable for achieving those goals. We'd come up with ideas around people he might connect to, follow up on connections. And we read a whole host of self-help and professional development books together. It wasn't, Alex, read this book, report back to me on it, and tell me what you think. It was us reading them together and sharing what we had learned together. And that time that we spent was transformational. Interestingly, for both of us. One of the happiest moments in the last couple months was when Alex shared with me that, he said, Dad, it was a really tough year, but I'm glad I went through it. He said, I've learned so much about myself, and I feel so much more confident about who I am. He had worried that he was an imposter, that he hadn't learned the skills that he needed or didn't have the knowledge he should have to undertake the work that he did. It was tough, and there were moments when I wanted to just shake him and say, come on, get up and get this done. And I had to find all sorts of inner patience that I didn't know I had, and I hope that I don't have to find again. So the point I want to make is when we greet people, either in the work that we have at Sources or as people that we meet on the street, we need to think about where are they at. We need to think, how are we responding to them with a message of hope and kindness? One of the challenges we have here in the community that continues to grow and we struggle with is folks who are living on the street, who are homeless, or dealing with addiction issues. And people don't know how to respond. And they're looking for clear-cut guidance and solutions and responses. But When you engage in a relationship with anybody, it's really important to allow yourself to be in a relationship that demonstrates your authentic imperfection as a human being. If you are authentic about your limitations, if you are authentic about how much you actually care, people will forgive you your failures. One of the things that I learned in my conversations with Alex over the last year was the more I shared that I had misunderstood some of the learning that I had over the years, and the more I was vulnerable about it was still me needing to learn, the more he was willing to share what his vulnerabilities were, and together we grew as human beings. There's an opportunity when you engage and connect with people to move it from something that is purely transactional. You come in, you have a need, here, I'm going to give you some food. You come in, I'm going to give you a voucher for some housing. To one actually that can be transformational. And that requires risk, and it requires commitment. It requires your willingness to A, be hopeful, and B, inspire that hope. But that's only the first step. The second step is to work forward in a pathway together. And when we share that pathway that's encouraged by hope, but requires discipline, thoughtfulness, it's amazing what we can achieve in our human relationships and in our community. So in closing, I'd like you to remember that we use our hearts and our heads. The heart alone won't help the transformation that we're trying to achieve. And if you move directly to just fixing the problem, we've never dealt with perhaps the trauma that is preventing somebody from having the hope they need in their lives. And that it's through hope and courage. We have the hope for change, but the courage to make the change in our life that's necessary, that we can have transformation. Whether that's at a personal level or even a community level. This is for Dot and Court. Thank you.